What is going on, everybody? Wally back with another video. In today's video, we're talking about a class that I actually stopped playing recently but have a lot of footage of, so I think it's a good idea to cover it while I have this footage sitting there and still fresh on my mind. We're talking about the Warlock. The Warlock is a very fun class, so I'm going to break it up for you guys in sort of a basic overview type way, give you some examples, give you some opinions, and then you can kind of make your own judgment from there. And the idea of this is to better prepare you for the Crucible, what you're going to expect, how to best react to situations, and how maybe to best build your Warlock to your playstyle as an individual player of the Crusty Bowl. So to start off, we're going to talk about the stat placement of how everything works. So as a Warlock, your base stat that is always the highest is Recovery. Now, Recovery determines how fast you get your health back after the initial cooldown rate of that 1 to 2 second period where you cool it in, and it basically determines how fast that health bar will recharge and sort of everything that kind of goes with that. Now, it can be a very useful stat in PvP depending on your playstyle. Some others would determine it being very useless depending, again, on your playstyle. For me, personally, I play cover to cover, so whenever I'm behind cover, having a higher recovery stat means that I can get back out into the fight much quicker as opposed to when I'm not. So it means that the less time an opponent has to reach me, the better for me, because they may be rushing me around a corner. With a high recovery stat, I can have my health back for at least a little bit higher than I would have if I had a lower recovery stat. So again, it's something that you can kind of fool around with since it is the highest base. For all the classes, the Warlock has the highest recovery. You can sort of fool around with it. Of course, you can not do this too, and you can just go armor and agility, or all recovery and agility, however you want to build your character. It is definitely up to you. We sort of covered how the stats worked in the last video of the Crucible School, so if you guys want to check that out, feel free. But I will say, as a Warlock, the best way that I play is I play a big recovery agility build. Most of the builds that I play on my Warlock are all recovery agility. I find that those two are the most useful, and I don't find armor as useful as a lot of other setup builds, maybe for the Titan or even the Hunter. So it's up to you guys. You're going to have to kind of figure that out. It's mainly what is most important to you as a player that applies here. Now, with that said, we're going to be talking about the movement modes now. The movement modes are very interesting. As a Warlock, you get an option of a variation of glides. We're talking the standard glide, control, and then burst of speed. But with the Voidwalker, you get the option to use Blink. Now, Blink has often been said to be used as the mandatory movement mode for both the Hunter and the Warlock. Titans, unfortunately, don't get access to this. Now, the reason it's considered so useful is because it gives you an opportunity to jump out of the way of supers, exotic shots, sniper shots, and rockets, something that the other movement modes do not give you the ability to use because they're just so slow in their application. So again, the Blink can be very, very useful, but it's only found on Voidwalker. The problem with Glide is that it takes you out of cover for an extended period of time, a bit longer than you're going to want. Anyone looking across the battlefield with a sniper or any kind of long-range weapon, even a short-range weapon, is going to be able to hit you because you're going to be out of cover longer than you want to be. And that has always been sort of the issue that I've had with the Warlock. I love the glides for their ability to sort of get exactly where you want to go, because those glides give you the movement options, so you're not committed to anything. Whereas Blink, you're sort of committed to where you want to go as you use it. It's something that you're going to have to, again, take a look at to what you personally want as a player. My best advice is if you're going to play a Voidwalker, I would really recommend Blink because it is probably the most advantageous. If you're going to play Sunsinger, I recommend Burst of Speed, because anytime you spend less up in the air and more at point to point, especially cover to cover, the more survivability you're going to have. After the movement modes, we have the supers. Now, the supers are broken up into, of course, Voidwalker's Vortex and Sunsinger's Radiance. Now, starting with Voidwalker, we have the Vortex, the Lance, and the Shatter. Arguably, all of them are incredibly useful, but they all sort of serve their own purpose. So Vortex has this after effect AoE that stays on the field. Of course, this can be affected by other perks within the Warlock class itself. Lance is a straight line, the fastest version of the Vortex bomb that you can get your hands on. And then, of course, there's Shatter, which splits the Void Bomb into 3 little points, giving you a little bit extra area to cover at the less of an effect. The most useful one, I would have to say, is probably Vortex, because that after effect will get kills, especially if you drop on the flag. A lot of players sometimes stick into it, or they don't exactly understand how large the AoE range is. Again, it's something that can be argued that Lance is also the most useful because you can get that super off faster than you can get the other two off. You can also utilize this to hit targets at longer ranges or directly pinpoint an attack to be exactly where you want to go. This thing doesn't have any drop. It'll fly across the map if you wanted to. Again, Shatter can be very useful too because it gives you a wide area of attack, something that the other two may not give you. It may also give you the ability to hit targets on opposite ends of each other or just outside of your range as they normally would be for Vortex or Lance. Next up, we have the Sunsinger Supers, and this applies to Radiant Skin, Fireborn, and Song of Flame. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Song of Flame, probably not that useful in PvP. It may be useful if you really want to play a utility role, which again, I really have a hard time seeing the value in using this one in PvP. In PvE, definitely there is a value there, but in PvP, not so much. Fireborn and Radiant Skin, this is where you're going to see a little bit more use. So to break them down, Fireborn allows you to resurrect after a certain period of your death. And this can be very useful in certain situations, especially once the entire enemy team or your opponent has their back turned to you and you're on a flag and you just bring yourself back up, melee them in the back, instantly kill them. It operates in the same way and it can be very useful, but I will argue that Radiant Skin is probably the most useful one in terms of being able to deal out the maximum amount of damage at a reduced damage intake. So this one is directly relative to your armor value, your armor stat value, so it's a little bit difficult to calculate how much damage you're going to take, but you will take less damage overall in general. The idea here is that you throw out as many grenades as possible. If you're using Fusion or Firebolt, it's up to you, but the idea is that you want to use these grenades to bounce attacks off of. So you throw a grenade into a room, throw another grenade into a room, whatever, and then bounce in and sort of finish them off with your primary, your secondary, or your heavy. After the supers come the melees. Now the melees are broken up in an interesting fashion. So for the Voidwalker, you have Surge, Lifesteal, and Soul Rip. Now arguably, they can all be useful in PvP, but Surge again is probably the most useful as it activates a little bit more agility and faster reload speed off just a melee hit, where Lifesteal and Soul Rip only activate on a kill. And I want to make this very clear. So Surge is only activated on a hit. So if you give your opponent a nice little melee love tap, you immediately get that Surge bonus even if you don't kill them. However, Lifesteal and Soul Rip are only activated off of kills, so you have to kill that opponent with the melee and with the melee to be fully charged at 100% to get that value back. So there can be a really good argument to be made that Surge is the most useful because you're going to see the bonuses from it almost immediately. Lifesteal, again, can be very useful as well because it sort of allows you to get back into the fight much quicker. If you run into an opponent that you're both weak, you get into close range, not exactly sure how you're going to finish them off, go for that quick melee, you have your melee ability up, boom, you get your life pretty much back, a life recharge. Can be very useful. Up to you as a player, you're going to have to figure that one out for yourself. Of course, now you have the Sunsinger melees, and you have Flame Shield, Brimstone, and Solar Wind. The most useful one here, and I'm going to argue, is probably the only one you want to use, and I'm not even going to cover the other two because, in my opinion, they're not useful at all, is Flame Shield. Flame Shield gives you an extra overshield on top of your life bar and normal armor shield. That is incredibly, incredibly useful in certain situations, especially when you activate Radiant Skin. You have an ability to sort of be a juggernaut for an extended period of time as that Flame Shield stays up for about 5 to 10 seconds depending. Very, very useful. It's necessarily situational, but again, it's probably the most used and probably the most effective use of your Sunsinger melee, and it's the one I'm going to recommend you guys use. Finally, we're going to talk about the grenades here. So for the Voidwalker, you have the Vortex Grenade, the Shatter, and the Axiom Bolt. Now, again, the most used one you're going to see pretty much always is the Axiom Bolt, and there's a reason for that. It is a harasser grenade. It can be used to kill people, but it also can be used to chase opponents around corners, and again, is probably the most effective. Shatter Grenade, however, can be very useful too, and I've actually seen a couple good players utilize this in their builds to a very effective value, something that I haven't seen or really used personally, so I can't really make a judgment call on this one, although I will recommend Axiom Bolt for anyone who's just starting out in the Crucible and wants to make sure. It is considered one of those quote-unquote OP grenades, even though I really don't think it is, but I can see where people want to say it is. The Vortex Grenade is useless. Don't use it. That's my argument right there. The Sunsinger grenades are broke down in a similar fashion. You have the Solar Grenade, which operates as a Vortex Grenade, which, again, in my opinion, not useful. Stay away from it. The most two useful grenades and the most two used, you're going to see, are Firebolt and Fusion. Of course, there can be a good argument made for both of these, and a lot of players will go back and forth on what is most useful. For me personally, I think Firebolt is the most useful, especially if you're running a Radiant Skin build with, say, Heart of Praxic Fire. It allows you to just spam nades as quick as you can, dealing out a lot of damage to multiple targets in a very close-knit area, think Anomaly or Asylum. Those 2 maps, you're going to have a great time just tossing nades around corners and just picking up kills. Fusion Grenade can be used in a 1v1 setting or in a 2v1 setting, depending on your perk selection. So keep that in mind. Both of them very useful. Firebolt acts as an arc bolt grenade. It picks 2 targets in its range and sort of hits them both for a good period of damage. Fusion is the sticky grenade, the magnetic grenade, or the flux grenade of the class. And if anyone's seen how sticky grenades sort of operate in this game, they are kind of finicky with their magneticism, or magnetism is the word. So you can sort of get away with throwing them not really at the person's body, and it'll kind of attract to that person in a very weird way. So you can get kills that maybe you shouldn't get, and you can also get robbed in a similar fashion because sometimes it won't stick. So again, you're gonna have to make up your mind about that one. I'll recommend one or the other. For me, it's Firebolt, but there can be a great argument said about Fusion Nades as well. So the final thing here is the builds. Now I've done 2 builds. I've done the Lifestealer class, which is based off of using certain exotics, mainly the Red Death and Lifesteal perk melee in the Voidwalker class. And I've done the Flamer, which is based off of the Thorn and the burn effects, the dot damage applied in the Sunsinter class. So if you guys have any extra builds that you want to see, let me know. I'll link you guys the 2 builds that I'm talking about in this video and in the description. So if you kind of want to get a better idea of how those 2 builds may work in practice and in theory, you have better uses. And this is pretty much how I'm going to structure these class overview videos. I'm not going to do this for everything, obviously, but for the Titan and the Hunter, I'm going to give you a base opinion on pretty much everything. And I want to go ahead and say that once again, that this is just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's right or any more proper than anyone else's out there. Doesn't mean I'm better than anyone. It's just what I have seen being the most useful for me as a player in the Krusty Bowl. You guys have been great people. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see more, please let me know by saying, hey, Wally, I'd like to see more. You don't have to like or subscribe because that shit's gay, yo. I'm not going to say that. I love you guys very much. I hope you guys have a great day. I'm out. Peace.